could you tell us just very briefly, perhaps where OpenSpace was like from day zero, maybe day one, to what it is now, to what it might then become?
Well, we started with nothing. Well, I should say we didn't start with nothing. I think what we had going into bootstrapping the company was a good understanding of how both worked at the time and where it might go.
What was your view on the marketing in the past, and how has it evolved as you matured as a business?
Yeah, I mean, we actually don't spend a lot of money on marketing. And why? Well, I think what we've done is,
How do you manage to attract the best talent and then keep them with you?
Good question. I would say, I don't think it's rocket science. Like you need to be working on something and have people feel that it's like a double filter, right?
Good morning, Jeevan. We're just discussing that we would allow you to grab a little coffee as it is early where you are in the morning before we hit record today.
Thank you for letting me do that.
All right, cool. So Jeevan, welcome back. Round two. We previously released an episode with you back in March, and we were having some chats with people within the network and like, who are the best people we can speak to? And they're like, Jeevan, your name kept coming up. It was like, dude, we've got to invite you back for round two. So welcome back. And in the first episode with you that we released back in March, we really dived deep into your story. But in this one, I think we're just going to go full on in to business building, where OpenSpace is at the moment, and then maybe a little touch on reality capture. So with that said, can you tell us what OpenSpace is today?
Sure. Yeah. I'll put in a few points. We're a computer vision and AI company, and we exist to simplify how the world gets built. And what we want to do is pretty straightforward. If something's happening on a job site, if you can capture it in images, it's an open space. And if it's there, we want to make it very easy for you to find an answer. And once you find the answer, we want to make it very easy for you to get your job. Like, understand what's going on, take action on it, and move on. So that's what we do. And we've been working on some pretty exciting new technologies that are going to take that further. We're calling that umbrella of technology spatial AI, and we're going to be talking about it in the near future.
So spatial AI, right?
Yeah.
Is it something you said, can you speak a little bit about this? What is spatial AI? Or?
Yeah, totally. I'm happy to talk about it. So it is not a word we totally made up. So actually, I think it's this next generation of AI you're starting to see. So for those of you that follow this type of stuff, Fei Li, who's one of the big names in the field for a long time, she started a company. It's kind of a general purpose company, and I think they call it spatial intelligence. And what is it? It's basically the idea that a lot of what we think about AI today, or what's current in the news, is very much based on an internet text-based orientation of what is going on. It's not really aware of real physical reality, not really.
That's a good point.
But our customers, our world is a three-dimensional real world place. And so at OpenSpace, we're saying, we need to build technologies that are all about real reality and apply artificial intelligence to that. So you can kind of think of it as munging two concepts together. One is spatial computing. You guys maybe if you like Apple uses that term to describe their Vision Pro, but really it describes any software that's aware of real physical reality. And it's not just headsets, it's like cameras, are creating data out of real physical reality. So that's spatial computing. How can software be even capturing and aware of real reality? Then the AI side is how do you make it into a useful thing for a person to action, like get intelligence out of it. So spatial computing, artificial intelligence, spatial AI. It's not the most creative term, I admit, but pretty direct.
Okay. Jeevan, could you tell us just very briefly, perhaps where OpenSpace was like from day zero, maybe day one, to what it is now, to what it might then become? And I guess you just gave us a little teaser with the spatial AI there.
Yeah. Where did we start? Well, we started with nothing. Well, I should say we
What was
didn't
it
start
meant
with
to be?
nothing. You know, I think what we had going in to bootstrapping the company was a good understanding of how both spatial computing and AI worked at the time and where it might go, based on past experience. And we had a pretty good understanding of what was very painful and annoying for our customers. And that just came from past experience building products for these folks and some shared scar tissue. And then I guess we had a little bit of hard-won experience from doing companies in the past. So I guess we did have a few things. But what we wanted to do was, just make it super easy to have that full visual record of a job site. Just make it absolutely 100% simple. And that's the core product of OpenSpace today. You can walk around with a 360 camera and it just is clicking away while you're doing a job walk, and you upload that, and we extremely quickly, with a very little pain, turn that into this full Google Street View style look at a job, and you do it over and over and over again. And I think what we're proud of is that our system is just very simple and very fast and very reliable. And that has been one of the keys to getting from those early days to where we are today. And then we've been layering on more ways of making sense out of that data, and we keep on chipping away at that.
Mm-hmm. So having this record and the data captured on site, what do your customers need it for? Why is it a pain point to capture them, or why capturing this data is solving a pain point for them?
Yeah, like what's the point? Who cares, right? That's the question.
Yeah, we have data, great.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that's a very important question any entrepreneur must always ask themselves. So I guess to set the stage, I think it's important for people that are maybe not familiar with construction to realize that the idea of like taking photos of what's going on a project is old. I mean, people have been doing that since cameras were invented. But why were they doing that? Well, they're doing that because, like, what if something went wrong? It was kind of a CYA thing. Like, you needed to know if there's an argument or dispute. So that need has been there forever, and different projects have been dealing with that need in different ways. Like, prior to OpenSpace, I mean, some projects would actually, there's an industry where you hire a subcontractor type person to come and take photos of key areas. I mean, it's very incomplete and expensive to do that, but it was worth it for some people. Or you have kind of this half-hearted attempt to collect some photos into like a binder or something. So I think all we did is to address that pain of like, if something goes wrong, I need to know. And we just made a better mousetrap for it. It's just a way that's way faster and way more comprehensive. Now, the idea, which I think we've proven to be true, is that once you have that, you can start doing your job with that information. It's just easier to like resolve an issue or do an inspection, that sort of thing, than it is by writing it in a form. That's just like time consuming and annoying. And these folks, our customers, are very busy. And not only is it time consuming and annoying, the actual output of that written report is like not even great. It's such like a warped compression of what's actually going on the project. Not because people are trying to do a bad job, but just, pictures with 1,000 words. That's just another thing that's true. So, we see some of our customers just running like an OAC meeting. Instead of looking at like an Excel spreadsheet, they just have our software open and they're just going through, here's this issue, here's that issue, here's that issue. So in some ways, we're like displacing Excel, which is pretty cool to see.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Jeevan, just to sort of highlight where OpenSpace is right now. So you guys founded in 2017. That's right. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we're 7 years into the journey.
Yeah.
According to some research, I know it's hard to get these figures out, but your turnover is in, the best data I could find based on a simple Google search was 30 to 50 million. Let's assume that it's in the tens of millions. I don't know if you want to share any more information on that. Don't have to.
Yeah, I guess what I'll share, I can share some other info about where we're at. Sharing revenue numbers is kind of not something that we do. publicly. But yeah, but we have achieved some nice scale. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's so much more we can do, but I jotted some things down here. So, we've been deployed on about, I think, when I last checked, like $700 billion of projects.
Yeah.
And we've captured and organized about 37 billion square feet of projects. That's a lot. I think we checked with like 2.1 billion 360 images and hundreds of thousands of users, and all with a 99.999% uptime. So yeah, it's cool. It's like, okay, what that tells to me is like, when people find out about what we do and they try it, they use it. When they use it, it starts to expand. And so that's nice. I think that's given us a nice start to build off of.
Okay, cool. So I just done some basic maths based on the 101 construction tech pricing manual of charging customers based on project value. And 1% of 700 billion is 7 billion, right? So there must be your revenue.
No, I don't know. No one's charging 1%. That's like crazy. Oh, maybe we should try that. Hey, can we just charge you your profit on this project?
Yeah. Where? Even better.
No, we don't charge that much. I mean, that's one thing that I think is kind of cool too, is we've for a variety of reasons have pretty efficient technology stack. A lot of AI companies, they have pretty bad gross margins. And so that basically means, for those that don't know, like you sell your thing for X, how much does it cost you to serve it? And so pure software companies are known for having really high gross margins, but AI companies oftentimes don't, because their processing is very expensive, or they have a large amount of human data labeling. And then it just, something like necessarily wrong about that. It just means that you're not netting that much profit for each sale you make. And I think one thing that I think we did a pretty good job of early on is really building some technology that could scale. That meant we would have high gross margins for us. And also that turns into, not having to charge like $1 zillion to our customers, or just be like losing money on sales. People do that, but it's not the most sustainable thing to do.
And what's the customer journey right now? Do you give them some sets, or how does it look like?
Oh, if someone like wants to try us out, how does it work? Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, actually. I mean, if you're a new builder, we haven't worked with you before, generally what we'll do, and it depends on the category, so I'm generalizing here a little bit. Generally what we'll do is we'll let people try it. We have this thing, it works great, especially for our trades customers, a 30-day pilot. Just try it out, try out a bunch of projects and see what you think, and we'll answer questions and provide that support. I think I got to say, like, I've been talking about the technology, but I really have a lot of pride in our customer facing teams too. They come from the industry. They really know what they're talking about and have that empathy. So we do that. And then if they don't like it after 30 days, then they can just not use it. But if they do, then they can sign a contract and get on board with us and begin that journey. And as it won't shock you, the reason we do this 30-day pilots is because they work. Like almost always people will be like, yeah, this is good. We want this. And even in situations when they're trying out a bunch of solutions, in fact, we win more often when that's happening. So what they kind of get us on a set of their projects, and then it typically grows from there, as people start to see us, saving them time or solving like some very painful or thorny issue.
I think, Martin, let's keep this a little bit like higher level before we go into specifics, because I just really wanted to prime the conversation with some of the stats you just mentioned, Jeevan. Obviously, also, you guys have raised over $200 million-ish. You have over 30 investors yet. Are you unicorn status yet?
What is it? I think we're like near a corn or whatever. I think your last
New
valuation.
York.
Yeah. But I mean, I got to tell you, I don't know if this is whatever. This is what I think. I feel like the most important thing you can do is just try to like establish a company that's doing something valuable for like a big enough market, and then just keep doing that and keep growing, you know? And then you'll be rewarded for doing that. So I don't know, like, especially for us, you know, we one thing I'm proud of is a little luck too, is we just were able to really arm our company with a balance sheet. And so our need to raise money, we just haven't had to do it. We've been running in a way where we have that balance sheet, not burning too much cash. And so we can just keep going, you know? So I feel lucky about that because we don't have to think about our valuation that much. It's not, oh, we have to raise money in this time or whatever. So it kind of allows us to focus on just building a durable company for the long term.
Okay, well, maybe you gave us a little teaser there to my next question. So what's the story to get into like the stats where you're at now? Like, you guys have grown at quite a rapid speed. So,
hey listeners, I want to take a quick break to remind you about the Bricks and Bytes newsletter. If you're interested in learning about the technology shaping the future of construction, you won't want to miss the valuable insights we share each week. To get this exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox, head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today. Link is in the show notes. Back to the show.
where does that stem from? Like, is that you as a founder? Is that how you always intended to build the company? Is it just because you are literally going after a big enough market and doing a very good job?
Well, yeah. Let me try to think about that question. Well, I would say a few things. I guess I would boil it down to two things, guys. Like one, I think the product value proposition is pretty straightforward. It doesn't require that much explanation to anybody that's built a building before. That helps. Number two, the way it works for the end user is very simple. It's just not complicated to set up and use. And that was a bit contrarian, by the way. I can get into more of that, but we just focused on extreme simplicity. And the third property is it is very scalable.
Sure.
For a few reasons. One, because it's not fundamentally complicated. And then two, there is a lot of work we've done to make sure that if you want to use us on one project or 1,000, it will work. It's just not going to screw up as you scale it up to that level. And some of our customers do thousands of projects, they do a lot. And so if it works on 3, it's just not interesting to them. So I think those have been pretty key on the product side. And then I would say on our go-to-market side, this might sound corny, but it's just true. Like we really care. We just really care about trying to do a good job on behalf of our customers. And I think our customer facing folks just really, they care. Like I said, a lot of them have literally been customers of ours before they joined OpenSpace, and they've been literally in the shoes of our customers. And that really helps. And it helps us be honest with them, which I think is really rewarded in this industry too.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, out of the 700 billion project that you worked on, are you industry agnostic, or are you going to particular type of projects or clients that work on particular type of projects?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say OpenSpace is pretty broad, maybe that's another answer to your question, Owen, on the sort of scale thing. It works, we're useful on data centers and hospitals and stadiums, and also on 3-month renovation and TI projects too. So I think a lot of people looking in construction technology that aren't familiar with it kind of view construction as giant tower cranes building, big buildings, which is definitely part of the industry, but it's a lot of just little renovation projects or, a 50,000 square foot multifamily project. And I think we actually, in starting the company, we tried to get a couple of those different types of projects going to see if the customers would like it. Now, we're not useful on everything, don't get me wrong. So I would say to date, single family home, we don't have too many customers doing that for a variety of reasons. And, there are some projects that are like building a highway. Actually, we do some customers doing that, in fact, but I wouldn't say we absolutely nail that because this is just a different scale of project. But yeah, to your question, it's relatively broad.
Yeah, was that always the way, Jeevan, or did you kind of start with just one specific type of project which you really tried to nail, and then move out into like more of a broader segment?
I think what we did kind of by accident, well, I don't know, maybe I'll give ourselves a little bit more credit, is that our earliest customers that we just knew from prior experience were not the sort of mega builder in our top 50. We had one customer called West Builders. And I think that was really good because it just meant that we had to be like useful and practical on a project that has no innovation people, no technology people, actually, like superintendents, PMs. And we kind of used that principle. So that if I were to think about the very first projects we were on, there was that kind of there was two multifamily projects, like apartments and condos. One was higher end and one was not. Then $1 billion big kind of tech campus project. And I think a children's hospital. So we had, a bit of a diversity, but I think we were most attuned to that smaller apartment project and wanted to make sure that was like totally successful.
Why did you like refrain from hitting the ENR 100 or like first 10 or 20 of them in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was not that we were like, they're bad or something. Those are many of our customers. But I think for me, just some past learnings and scar tissue is that the very biggest projects can be extremely misleading as to what builders actually want. And they can be very misleading because they might have excess budget to like, hey, want to buy some technology? Dude, companies don't scale because there's people like, oh, we should buy some technology. They scale because you're like solving some painful thing for them for reals, right? And so if you have like someone who's buying you just to like the neato, that is not real product market fit, right? And so bigger projects can sometimes delude you to thinking you have something that people actually want. And yeah, those big projects have these two problems. One, there could be excess money that you would never spend on like your 80% of your actual business as a construction company. And then there'll be people on those projects who are focused on that may not be the actual people running the show for reals, So I think there can be very instructive to try and make sure you're valuable just on a total run-of-the-mill construction project. Because if you're not, that could be a warning sign.
How important do you think it is for founders to stay pretty narrow in the early days?
I think it's very important. I mean, like, people usually screw up by being too broad. You know what I mean? It's rare that you screw up by being too narrow, especially in the early days. But I'm going to maybe say a contrarian take. You kind of need to understand where you could take the company over the longer term. I would say that is true really in construction technology or a lot of these enterprise type businesses, because in consumer businesses, you have like an infinite TAM, right? And if you're this one type of person, it's probably a lot of people, and then it can grow from there. I do see some companies in our category, they sort of end up getting pigeonholed into a very specific type of project or persona or something. And it's not bad. I mean, they make those people happy, but they hit a wall. I mean, I was talking with one of our investors and she was like, what we found looking at a bunch of companies, there's like this seeming wall of around 10 million of ARR, and companies can get there and then they just get stuck and they never are able to get beyond that. And if you can get past that, then you have an opportunity to have something that could really scale up. And we're kind of digging into like, why is that? And I think one of the reasons is that you may just have this situation where you just are only relevant for a pretty narrow set of types of projects, and that's it. And there's no ability to expand. So I guess I'm saying two almost contradictory things. Like being all over the place when you start is not great. But if you're serving an industry like ours, you kind of need to understand whether you can be truly relevant for a wider variety of customers.
Okay, brilliant. I like the answer. Can you give us an example of a situation or strategy that you did not execute well on?
Oh, dude, yes. So many on this podcast. Yeah, I mean, I would say just overscaling certain parts of the business at the wrong time. And it's tough. You're kind of making bets. You see a bunch of growth. You're like, okay, well, that seems to be working. Let's add more fuel to that. But sometimes it just doesn't work. And then you have to deal with it and move on, And so
was it like the sign of perhaps raising too much money or having like too much capital to deploy into the business, or?
I think too much capital can definitely enable that type of behavior for sure. Definitely. And I think a lot of technology companies are doing in the past, whatever, those years when growth at all costs was the mission of the day, We totally had that. And it's funny, like I look back at that and I think we made some errors. And then again, I'm like, well, could have been worse. Like we continued to grow. Like we've had our best quarters ever of all time, these past 3 quarters, and so I think we got there not in the most efficient way, but we learned how to be efficient because of those lessons. You know what I mean? So I don't know, like would I have rather avoided that? Yes, but it's worked out okay in the end. But I would say that's the thing we didn't execute well on, is like not having enough evidence before investing behind growth. And again, there's no silver bullet for that. You can't totally make it a science, because the opposite of that is to be overly conservative. And then you aren't able to make it up to your customers. So I'd love to like tell my bad self to exercise more caution on that front, but I don't know specifically what I would tell them. And then, but what I would say about that though, and putting this kind of in terms of like cash burn or financial metrics and all that kind of stuff, and it's true, it shows up in those ways. But I feel like culturally, that's where I feel like it was where I made some mistakes. I was like, all right, well, we need to, hey, this is working. Let's like install this team. And it's hard to do that and keep your kind of scrappy, aggressive, happy warrior culture. And I think honestly, we kind of got away from that, and I'm glad to have like re-achieved it. And it's not because the people we brought on were bad. That's not what I mean. It's just that it's just harder to keep that energy if you're adding a lot of people and you're not interviewing them all, So, so I think those are the two things we did not execute well on. Or I guess it's one thing, is investing behind certain growth signals that were not as well, I was going to say not as real as we thought, but that's not even the case. They were real. It's just the timing was off.
So you said something very interesting, and congrats on these record 3 quarters. Can you spill the beans? What contributed to these like record numbers in these 3 quarters? Because it sounds kind of counter intuitive, as everyone is saying, "Oh, recession, rates are being cut. That means recession." And how do you?
We're all gonna die.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty cool, right? So like, why? It's a good why is this happening? I would say there's a few.
You shouldn't do so well.
Yeah. I think there are a few things going on. Honestly, one, we're executing way better. We're executing, I think, like we've had phases of excellent execution, and I think we got a little away from that, and now we're just executing better. It's a talent and motivation thing. It's like, it sounds very fluffy, but I think it's true. So I think that is definitely one part of it. I think the second thing is, to get a little less fluffy, is that because our kind of value proposition and products and technology serves a reasonable chunk of the market, it makes us less sensitive to slowdowns in subsegments. We kind of are averaging across the industry more than other companies, maybe in construction technology. So let me give you a real example. So office, bad, totally dead, right? Like
Uh-huh.
people building, I should say a little bit more specifically, off urban cores, right?
Mm.
Now imagine that you built a technology company that was very much awesome for towers. Well, then you would be suffering for the past year or two. I think, yeah. So some of our customers that do that aren't doing as great. But we have plenty of customers that are doing totally different stuff. And so it allows us to continue to grow across these different, ebbs and flows of different parts of the market. So I think that's also what's going on. And the third thing is not to get too excited about ourselves. I mean, yes, I'm proud of what we've done. It's cool, but we're just early, man. There's so much more to do, and there's so much more market out there. I mean, really, like, if you think about this number of builders and what they're doing out there, it's so big, and we really just scratched the surface. So there's plenty more. Whether the market's up or down, there's still so many more builders out there that could benefit from what we're doing. And when we talk to them, they tend to try it out. So that's true as well.
Very nice. Jeevan, could you help our audience understand some sales tactics? Like, are there some specific ways or things that people should look out for when selling to, let's just pick, because it has come up in a few conversations recently, mid-market general contractors?
In AEC tech.
Yeah. How to win mid-market folks?
Yeah.
General advice, I'll get more specific. You really have to know for reals who is your user, actually for reals. Number one, and you really have to know who is your buyer, actually for reals. Like the people that you're talking to may not actually be either of those, right? And so that can get very confusing. So I think with mid-market, the thing that's nice about it is that there can be less obfuscation there because they're typically run somewhat leaner organizations, which means that the PM probably is your buyer and probably has the authority to buy stuff, and he or she may also be your user, depending on what you're doing. Which means you can have a pretty effective conversation right away. So, focusing on that. And I think mid-market is good because you don't have to do quite as much guesswork on those two questions. And then I think the other thing is just make it very simple for your customer, not just for the product to be simple, but for their interaction with you to be simple. Like don't make it hard for them to try what you're offering them. They have way more stuff to do in their day than talk to a technology company, So do not make their life harder, make it easy to interact with them and to try what you're doing. And then really focus on your time to value. Like it's really nice if you can show time to value, like in a week,
So that's you calling it time to value. Is it ROI?
Well, it could be ROI, but ROI is a fairly dry term, right? So pain alleviation is also the reason why people buy stuff, So, and I think that is sometimes harder to quantify. And by the way, you can't get away with vague pain alleviation forever. You need to be able to compute what your ROI is for your customers who are going through growth and starting to interact with more executives. But it's very real. I mean, I kind of think about video call technology or Zoom or something like that. Like people didn't start using Zoom a lot because they were doing an ROI calculation. Not at first. It was just easier to use. It was just easier, or like Slack is another good example. It's like, oh, what's the ROI on Slack? I don't know, but it's easier. It's an easier way to do a messaging system. And this made certain things easier. And that goes a long way, especially I think with people that are really doing the work for your customers, like the users in the field. There's a lot of pain in daily life. If you're out there building a building, if you've had any experience with that, what I'm talking about. And if you can just take an hour out of their day or something, it goes a long way and creates loyalty. So if you can demonstrate that in a week, that is really good. And then generally speaking, if you're alleviating pain, you will be able to compute that with ROI. So like OpenSpace, I think this is kind of a good example. We I think we're do a pretty good job of alleviating pain pretty quickly because almost always there's going to be some issue or problem within the first week or 2 or 3 of using us. We're like, oh, hey, we can just check OpenSpace. Look, that's where the trade damage was. Like, okay, got it. Like, no, that was a lot easier. So that's nice. And then the ROI builds up over time as we can say like, hey, we don't really need to have this much travel. We don't really need to have this extra checking. And then, or more importantly, like, these 3 change orders that we squashed, they were 5x the cost of the software. So those stories get passed around. And I got to tell you guys, like, been pretty obsessed with trying to get from there to truly quantified ROI, especially as we get scaled across very big organizations and we're talking to a CFO or something who's maybe not getting the field pain. And we had this insurance carrier, Shepherd, who studied OpenSpace and said, like, okay, for those companies that use it versus don't, what are the frequency of claims? And it turns out the OpenSpace job, the claim frequency is vastly less, right?
Nice.
But now, like, this is real, it's happening, and it's pretty exciting because this is another field for growth for us.
Yeah.
This carrier will write insurance policies, and these are like CSIPs and OSIPs, like the full wrap policies. And if you use us, they give significant discounts, up to 25%, right? Just to put that in context, 25% off like a wrap is a big dollar amount. It's definitely more than OpenSpace costs, And so if you're the CFO, you don't even care what OpenSpace says. You're like, buy whatever that thing is. Now my project is literally cheaper to build. So I can make more profit off this project or give my team more bonuses, or maybe I can have a more aggressive bid than my competitors. So I'm pretty excited about that because that ROI is now like very tangible, very clear. You cannot argue with it. It's like there's no case studies. It's just obvious. I will say it took many, many, many years to get to this point, and there's still so much more to do there. But I had to say it because I've been pretty excited about it. I have to say it a bunch because, a few years ago, they were telling some of our investors, like, this is going to be the future. It's going to happen. In the past few years, I'm like, hey, how's that whole insurance thing going? I was like, just be patient. And the fact that it's finally getting unlocked is pretty exciting for me.
Sounds like another revenue stream. You can charge 1% of the 25% insurance savings, huh?
Yeah. I mean, but honestly, like, yes, maybe, but and maybe I'm not being greedy enough or something, but I don't want to be greedy. I just like, look, we've got software. It's great. It makes your life easier. We make money when we sell it. I don't need to like be hunting for these little streams. Like, if I can save our customers off an insurance policy, that means they'll buy more of our software, and that's great. That's like a victory, and starts to get us into start to scratch at this idea of us as like a platform for other things to like sit on top of that create just more value across the board once you have all this reality data in super organized way.
I'm very curious on this insurance. Would that be worded in the contract that the contractor has to use a reality capture solution or OpenSpace?
Just OpenSpace, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You might say like, well, why is that? Well, the reason is we have just the most data out there due to
that can prove that it works.
Proof. Like, we have across a lot of customers. So it's not just a guess. I mean, like, it's an insurance company. I'm not just making it up. It was like a long study. And I think it's not just the scale that gives them confidence. It's also the fact of our usability. The usability shows up here, right? Like, that whole value proposition of it'll save you some money on insurance is because people actually use OpenSpace. Like, there is this record getting created that helps nip claims in the bud. If there are other solutions out there that people just don't use as much because they're a little bit more annoying to use, or you need some more specialist person to use it, the whole insurance value proposition goes away. Like, if you're only capturing your project once every 6 months, or like people stop doing it because it's annoying, then that's not a thing that carrier wants to underwrite, right? So I think those are the two components that have put us in that category.
Jeevan, curious your thoughts on marketing, because for me personally, I think I've before I really got interested in construction tech as an industry, I think I may have already knew who OpenSpace was. And it seems like you guys are like everywhere, like at least every kind of trade show. I see you. And it's obvious that you guys put a lot of effort into that. So what advice would you give to people who are trying to figure out their marketing? And then how did OpenSpace figure out the channels that were most effective for them?
That's a great question. I don't know if we're doing anything that's that exotic.
Maybe you can kind of
really.
stage it, because at 200, like you're a very established company as well. So perhaps like, what was your view on the marketing in the past, and how has it evolved as you matured as a business?
Yeah, I mean, we actually don't spend a lot of money on marketing. And why? Well, I think we've done is, good products do help speak for themselves. In the end, I think word of mouth is the number one most important thing in this industry, and in most industries, really. And so I think the source of that is something people actually like. Like, you just imagine your customers, they are hanging out at a barbecue on Saturday. What are they talking about? They're talking about all kinds of stuff. There's like a 5% chance they're talking about some technology thing, And if they're like, hey, I've been trying out this new thing, it's called OpenSpace. It's pretty cool. Oh yeah, what's that? Well, it's awesome. Look, the BS factor of my job site has gone way down. You can just see what's there. And they're like, okay, that's actually how I think things evolve. And so having a good product is really good. Then once you have that, then you can try to do a few clever things. So let me get a little more tactical, and that's kind of extremely generic advice. So I would say a couple more specific things. I think because word of mouth is important in our industry, there are a couple gatherings where our customers in particular get together, and you just show up. And they're not like spend $1 bazillion. You just be there and listen to them and be available. And that helps. I would say, as we've grown, we can understand, we have a lot more data now on who uses us and why and that sort of thing, which allows us to reach out to customers way more efficiently than we used to. So that's helpful. And that just can happen when you get to a certain number of customers. And prior to that, don't waste your time. Like, you won't have enough numerical data. Just don't worry about it. Just be around your customers. And then, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Just like try to enable that word of mouth. I mean, okay, here's another little specific thing, which I would not engineer into a company. It just depends on, maybe you're this kind of company, maybe you're not. But if you are, recognize it, which is some companies have different kinds of engines of growth, right? There's different ones for different companies. Sometimes your product can be an engine of growth, but in a variety of ways. One way, it can be a collaboration platform, which kind of has this sort of social networky type of engine of growth. And OpenSpace has that. It's true. Like, we don't charge to add users. So you can get added to a project and you're the subcontractor and the GC happens to be paying for it. And then you're like, oh, what is this OpenSpace thing? So that's one thing that has helped us. And it's a product thing, but it's kind of a marketing thing too, right? The other engine of growth is OpenSpace. It's not this hidden away thing. Like on a job site, it is getting used, So you'll like be in a meeting and they'll see it. It's not just on one person's computer, because it's like a tool for just them. And then you'll see people like walking around with a 360 camera. And you're like, well, what is that thing? And that can be an opportunity for it's a marketing opportunity, right? I remember talking to the Fitbit guys, the guys that founded Fitbit. Like, in my first company, we had similar investors, and they said some interesting stuff. They're like, one thing that's worked well for Fitbit is that people wear it. So that if you have a Fitbit, it's just on your wrist, and people are like, what is that thing? Oh, it's a Fitbit. What does it do? Blah, blah, blah. And that was a marketing thing. And then there were another company that I was making wireless routers, and they were jealous because they're like, our routers are awesome, but they just sit there in people's homes. They're not like marketing themselves, right? People aren't like walking around with their wireless routers and people go, what's that wireless router? They just don't have that capability. But the Fitbit had that, which was kind of cool and helped them. And I think that's one of the interesting things about us is that we're kind of out there on job sites and people notice it and they can ask questions.
All right.
Very nice.
Speaking of, I would like to move to hiring and culture. Or anything else?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
no. Sure.
So how big is our OpenSpace now in terms of employee headcount?
We have, I wrote this down, I think 180 some people, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How do you manage to attract the best talent and then keep them with you?
And I would also highlight that Jeevan is probably like even more relevant in today's age of AI, where like the fight for talent is completely blown up.
Yeah. Good question. I would say, I don't think it's rocket science. Like you need to be working on something important and have people feel that it's important. It's like a double filter, right? Like people that are into their mission, you want to qualify that actually as you're interviewing them, because there are a lot of people with various skills that may not exactly care about what your particular company is doing. It's probably not great, because at the first sign of something going wrong, they're more likely to bail. And guess what? Something will go wrong. It is unavoidable. Like, is there any company in the history of Earth that has been up and to the right the whole time? Zero.
Especially in tech, right?
Oh yeah, especially in tech. I talked to some very investors that have been here for a long time. They're like, yes, eBay was one. And then of course I'll level up eventually. And that's the only one they could think of, it just doesn't happen. And so you need to have people that care and want to grit through the tough times and the setbacks. So I think that's one thing is describe what you're all about. Like, what are you trying to accomplish, and see if they're into it or not. I think that's one thing. That's the number one thing, actually. I know it sounds simple, but it's easy to forget. But really specifically when I'm interviewing people.
Do you interview everyone or just to specific roles?
I don't. I used to. Now I don't, although I do it more. I'm trying to do that more. So more that we hire, I actually will want to talk to. And then there's certain people I definitely interview, which are executive hires or whatever, right? And one of my questions early on is I asked them for their life story. I'm just curious how they narrate themselves beyond their LinkedIn profile. And then I say well, why us? You are clearly an experienced, qualified person. Otherwise we wouldn't be here speaking. You chose to speak with me for an hour. Why? And that can be really instructive, because they can be well, I'm really interested in growth technology companies in general. And I'm disqualified, or if they're I see what you guys are doing, and it's that's a game changer. I totally get it. Maybe hey, I would as a company now, and it can be kind of weird stuff sometimes. And one of the things I was in charge of was the company's office space, and we had to grow and remodel offices, and it was awful, and I see what you guys doing really changing that. I'm okay, cool. This person gets it, I don't want to have to mega persuade them that what we're doing is worth it. So I think that's really what I would focus on. And then in terms of keeping them, so thing number one, that really provides the ballast to get through the hard times. Two, you just try to be real with people as the company is operating, and what is screwed up and bad, what is going great, and not try to overly silver lining things, because I think that is important. You kind of know what's going on. And it's not easy to do that with a large amount of people. You can't individually call all of them. So you have to try to do that with your all hands messages or whatever. And then the third thing is you just want to pay them competitively, and I think, there's data on that stuff, and you just don't want to be totally off the mark. That's it. And then, the hiring markets are not exactly super opaque. You can know what is fair and make sure people are getting what's fair. I generally think that people in companies, those people we want, generally they're there to do something important that they feel is important, something that's going to make a difference for what they happen to care about. And then the other two things you need, which are they like their manager. There's me or whatever, leadership, but also their manager has to not suck. That's the one reason why people lose or change jobs a lot. And they have to feel like they're being compensated for. there are a few people that are like very motivated by money only. But I tend to think those are not the best people. Like we're all in this to like have a great economic outcome. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that is like the reward, right? That's your number one thing. It's that might be a person that will stick with your company for the long term.
Jeevan, what do you think are the key metrics people should be tracking? And is there nuance that comes into it when you throw like construction and AEC into the mix?
You mean like financial metrics if you're a founder?
Yeah.
I think it depends on the stage. Like very much depends on the stage, and getting confused as to what stage you're in is like a recipe for disaster. So I think very early on, revenue is completely irrelevant. It does not matter. And getting alignment with your investors is very key. The only thing that really matters is customer happiness and engagement, which you can measure in lots of different ways to measure that. You know, net promoter score, weekly actives, whatever, a couple numbers like that. I mean, that's what I think anyways, because if people don't like your thing, do not pass go. Do not hire any, like don't scale it. You know, it doesn't mean you're bad or that you suck. It just means you haven't figured it out yet. And you have it exactly as long as your cash burn will let you do it. If you run out of money, then, then sorry, move on. But if you figure it out in that time, then great. Then you may have a case you can make to scale up. So a very early phases, does anybody care about what you're doing? Like that kind of question, like why? Who cares? Like why would anybody use this? And then, but don't listen to words. People will say a lot of nice things. When I look at construction, people are pretty honest and direct, but there are enough voices out there that not even being dishonest, they're just not reflecting what their organization truly cares about. And they might say, hey, your thing is awesome and we believe in it and it's the future. And you're like, hey, that sounds great. I feel good. But then are they actually using it? You just got to check. Numbers don't lie. They're not trying to hurt your feelings. They're just real, right? So that's, I think, your early stage. And then once you have something figured out, then you can start denominating the value you're creating in money, right? And so I think there's a variety of different metrics. I think it's good to think about just some top line revenue number, which could be, some revenue number, ARR or bookings or whatever. It's kind of basic stuff. It's good to know your gross margin, And then
which stage are you at
with our gross margin?
Well, in general, on these stages of like looking at the profits and not looking at the profit.
Yeah. Well, we definitely are in the revenues and profits world, right? Big time, which is great. And like I said, I'm happy to report that you've had like very excellent quarters. So that makes our board meetings much more straightforward. And then, so there's some top line metrics and then some efficiency metric, whatever makes sense for you. What I'd recommend is like, burn multiple or something like that. If that's how your business works, like how much ARR you're adding versus how much cash you're burning. That's like a nice one. And then some kind of sales marketing one that could be like CAC payback or LTV CAC or whatever, because you're probably going to be burning cash early. That's what the whole game is. You burn some cash, you invest in that, and then you get to become profitable later with a bigger business. But the reason why you're burning cash is good to understand. So I think a lot of times people don't understand that their sales and marketing is actually losing them money. It can happen a lot, especially in AEC. Like the amount of time it takes you to get the customer and maintain them versus what you're getting out of it is underwater. Like that happens a lot actually. And then that's not good. You better address that. And there's a variety of ways to address that. So measuring that's important. So to simplify, I would say early phase, measure net promoter score and engagement. Make sure those numbers are good. Once they're good, then you flip over to like, well, what is some revenue metric? And then maybe 2 efficiency metrics like burn multiple and maybe an LTV CAC or something like that.
Can you share some wisdom how people can control if sales and marketing are burning too much?
Like, how do you know?
How do you know? Yes, like smart ways of like figuring it out or tracking it.
Yeah, I mean, an LTV CAC will just tell you, right? Now, this is one thing that is kind of subtle, I would say. Like, some of these SaaS metrics are not like, they may or may not like directly apply to how your customers buy from you. And it's getting it super clear about that. Like cutting and pasting what you read on a blog post into your construction technology company is risky because it can give you two potential errors. One is you sell it to customers in ways they don't want to buy your stuff. And it's annoying for them and you just made it hard. I would say that's a mistake we made, by the way. There was a little phase where we're trying to like make it complicated for people to get OpenSpace, not the technology, but how they transacted with us. And I was like, oops, stop doing it. So make sure you're not just easy to try and easy to use, but easy to buy, I would say. And then given how your business model works, like, you know, take some time to interpret some of these efficiency metrics so that they make sense for your company. You know, just spend a little bit of time on mutating them so they really describe reality for you. And then I think you'll have a number and just try to stick to it, you know, like for a few quarters or something, because there's a human tendency if the number is bad, you're like, oh, the metric is just inaccurate. And you pick some other number that tells you a better story. So I think those numbers are good. And by the way, what will probably happen is if you're doing metric X, probably it'll tell you like, ooh, boy, that's not good. You know? And at that point, you don't freak out. Like you can then, if you're at a certain amount of scale, you can probably dissect it and say like, well, under what populations of deals or customers is it good? Under what populations is it bad? Like, oh, well, actually, it's great over here. It's just bad over here. So that's an opportunity to focus. You know, maybe it's bad for all of your customers. And you're like, oh, you know, I mean, that can happen too. But I think the former is generally.
Maybe a quicker one, Jeevan. As CEO, obviously you have like an unlimited number of spinning plates, and I guess maybe you have a plan at 8 a.m. in the day, and by 8:05, like you've got to deal with something else. How do you maintain focus, especially as you have 100 and was it 80 something employees?
Yeah,
87.
Man, that is the main question. When OpenSpace is truly kicking ass is when we are focused, and our core value, number one, is literally simplify everything. And I can almost boil down every mistake we've ever made to like not being true to that core value. This is hard to do. It's hard to keep things simple. It's just hard. The world wants to ask many things of all of us as individuals and as companies. And you don't want to say, no, it's not, doesn't feel nice to do that, you know, but it screws you up over the long term. So, you know, as I've been thinking about this very same question, and I think one way to do it is just to remind yourself of the value of simplicity and give yourself and your team ways to say no to things that can be accepted. And ways to say no to customers too. That is like not easy to do, right? But I think it's very, very important. So I think for me, like to get really more specific, I like to have a top 3 things I'm doing in a given week. And that's my to-do list. It's just bullet points. And I just try not to have more than top 3 things in a given week. And I try not to have top 3 things in a given quarter. You know, like it's kind of simple, but you know, it works. And I don't always succeed with that, by the way, but it's better than nothing. You know, it definitely helps. I think that is really key. And then the last thing I would say in terms of maintaining focus is, you know, just making sure the narrative of what you're trying to accomplish is clear, because that allows you to like, you know what, there's a million things we can do, but this story I think is really the one that we picked to go forward with. And we'll see if it works. It'll give us a year or two. And if it doesn't work, that'd be sad. But if it does, it'll be great. But I'm not going to do other stuff during that time. But that narrative needs to be updated often, because the world changes, stuff changes, you know? And so I think doing that helps you stay focused too, because it kind of gives you a bit of a North Star.
All right, guys. Have we got a few more minutes?
Yeah,
I do.
Few more questions. Yeah.
Okay. So, On the investor side, how did you pick your investors? You've got quite a few. That's part of the question. And where in San Francisco there's such a big conference room to gather 30 board members?
Yeah. Well, I guess this is actually good sharings with you guys. So tell you how I picked them and how we organize things. So what was very important from my past experience is to have a small board and a smaller number of stakeholders, because I've seen big boards and it's just hard to manage. Not that anybody's bad. It's just more complicated. Even at OpenSpace, it's like, if I see a team getting created and then it suddenly has like 30 people on it, I'm like, that's not good. Can you just make it 5 or 8? I know it's hard because people won't know what's going on, but like, it's hard to accomplish anything. So for us, I think we tried to do that as founders pretty early on, and our board has, there's 5 board members, and 2 observers. I think it's not too bad for a company at our stage, And then Mike and I, he's a co-founder and CTO, are on the board. Bilal from Lux Capital is on the board. He's our seed and egg investor, and Sean Carolyn's Series B investor. And then the independent director is a guy named Alan Henricks, who's really awesome and, very successful guys, like definitely like guided a bunch of companies to awesome outcomes. And he happened to be the board of my first company too. So, and he was on the board of Roku with Sean. So they all know each other. That was nice. So the board isn't that big. And then we have our observers from the C and D. So you say 30 investors, but the board actually is not 30 people in a room. It's 7. Well, no. We have our attorney comes in and then Paul, our CFO. Well, it's not a big meeting. So that's thing number 1. That makes it easier, right? And then how did we pick them? So you might say, well, why is it not just 5 investors? Why is it 30? What's going on there? Well, the reason is twofold. Very early on, I had this theory, which I think was true, is that if you are going to be serving construction, or I would say generalize that maybe to any kind of industry or enterprise category, it's not like a straightforward channel. It's not like you put your stuff on the App Store. No, it's about human relationships, And I said, I think it'd be really valuable for us to reserve half of the cap table in that first round to strategic investors, people actually building the buildings, investors whose only investors are builders. And Lux, of course, has the capability of writing very large checks. So to say of this already very small seed round, only half of it is going to go to Lux, was like, they got it because I had gotten to know them and I was part of Lux Capital, right? And it worked. So having those customers as investors made it easier for us to talk to more customers, and for them to try out half-baked technology and give us their honest feedback. So I think that has worked. If you kind of scan through that longer list of investors, I think you'll see they are builders or they're investors who are strategically focused only on construction technology. And so that's what we did. Then in later rounds, of course, you tend to batch together a few investors because the check sizes get pretty large. So then you have like BlackRock and people like that, right? But in general, that's why my thought was like, yes, it's a little bit more sort of quote unquote management overhead if you have more investors, but I think it's absolutely worth it if you're serving the industry like ours. But don't put them all on your board, and then it's too complicated.
Yeah. Very nice. Jeevan, how about people perhaps on a fundraising journey trying to pick their investors? I guess that can be quite a personal question, I suppose, to the company, and there's lots of actual factors that affect that. But is there any general rules that one should look at? And again, if you can relate it to construction, even better.
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, should you be so lucky that you're truly picking your investors, right?
Yes.
Like you're trying to raise around.
Well, if you have a good enough product, then
yeah, no, totally. So the way to get in that situation is to have a business that actually makes sense, right? And if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. Just try to make it good, like make it satisfactory to you, like so that you're not like trying to BS yourself when you're talking to investors. You feel pretty confident about what you're doing. Okay, so assuming you're in that situation and you have an interest, and there's more than one investor who's like, maybe wanting to review that term sheet or whatever. I don't know. I mean, my advice is see if you get along with that partner, and it's the partner that counts. Like, you're able to talk to them. Do you like each other? Could you handle a harsh message from that person? Could you deliver a harsh truth to that person? It's going to happen. You might as well feel out if that is something that you could do. That's thing number one. Thing number two is if you are looking to them to help you expand your business, just double check that, like I think a lot of investors want to add value. Because if you think about VCs, it's pretty undifferentiated product, which is money. Like all money is green. It's all the same, right? So if they're saying, yeah, I can really hook you up with customer X, Y, and Z, just double check that. Like, yeah, that's awesome. Do you mind introducing me to the CEO, whatever, Acme Builders? And if they don't want to, that's kind of weird, something they should be wanting to do to prove to you that value is real. It's just like you're piloting them, right? Just like your customers pilot you. And then the third thing I would say is just understand what types of check sizes they can write. This is oftentimes just can screw people up. There are lots of investors in our space which are very awesome, and they're seed and A investors, and they're not trying to hide that. Just be aware that that's what they do, and they are not going to be able to get you that next round. Or put in a lot of capital that next round, or bail you out if something is going wrong. So just be aware. I think one thing I think we did that worked pretty well is that if you think about Series A and Series B investors, those are like pretty big, deep-pocketed investors. So it means that if we don't suck, if we're doing well, that I know that I have backers that can back us, and they're not going to be like, "Hey, we love you, but we seriously do not have any more money." That happens. You don't want that. So I think those are the three factors. Like, do you like that individual person? If they're strategic, just check, and reference check them with some other founders who invested with them. And then the last thing is just understand what stage they are and what that means for you. Actually, maybe last little fourth micro point. If they are seed in A, one of their value propositions is that they can help you with that next round, and they actually know the bigger funds. I never had to check this myself based on who our investors were, so I don't exactly know how to go about doing this. But it'd be kind of nice if you could just double check that those relationships are real. Sometimes they're not. I mean, I don't know if I'd actually say this because it'd be kind of impertinent, but it's like so-and-so series seed investor. It's like, hey, were you invited to the picnic meeting of larger investor? Can I come? And they're like, oh yeah. And they're like, no. You're like, oh, then maybe you don't know those guys as well as you say.
Yeah.
I wouldn't actually ask that because that's sort of annoying. But there could be qualify those relationships.
Got it. Okay. Maybe last question. What does a day in the life of Jeevan look like as of September 24?
As of September 24. It varies
27th.
a lot. Yeah, it's the 27th. Yeah, that's true. It varies a lot, but I would say what it looks like more or less today is I will be talking to our team members, but I'm not just talking about like the leadership team. I really mean the frontline folks, which are, our folks in sales, product managers, and just be like, what's going on with our customers? I will be talking to our customers. And lots of times just riding along with calls that are already happening. Also, 2 major thumbs up for products like Gong. It's awesome. You can get like real customer feedback without necessarily having to like literally be there. That's awesome. And then depending on what I'm working on, try to get a little bit of time to synthesize some thoughts and write some stuff down, like whatever needs to get dealt with. So that's what I try to do, but also hopefully flowing from that, top 3 bullets. Like Sunday evening or Sunday morning is a lot of like, okay, what do I need to do next week? And I'll look at that to-do list. And that helps guide what I'm going to do that week.
Mm-hmm. So that was the last one from Owen, last one from me is, when are you going public?
I'm going to give you my corny answer I gave to you on the whole valuation thing. Like, yes, I mean, we're proud to have gotten to where we've gotten. It's awesome. It's like a cool number to like look at. But, man, whatever. Like the main thing is just to make a product that's valuable, make sure it's valuable to a large enough market that it can spot other products, and just keep doing that. Just keep doing that, and then good things will happen. Going public is such a funny thing. It's like it's like this sort of dream milestone thing, and it's cool to think about it. And it's also just yet another funding event, really. You really, if your company is over when you go public, it's the opposite. It's like even more.
It starts the next chapter.
Like I try to be just very focused on just moving the needle, every quarter and every year. And again, like I said, like we had the good fortune to be able to raise money when we didn't need it, and it's there. So we're not chasing that next fundraising milestone and freaking out about it. We can just be focused on building like as awesome a company as possible. So that's my answer. I know it's annoying, but that's what we really think. To make it a little bit less annoying, obviously going public is not just up to you. Like the public gets have their own whims and weirdnesses. And so you just time it right as well. Like companies that are generally like, not talking about construction technology, but other technology companies are much bigger than us over the past 2 years. Definitely have not gone public, even though their numbers are awesome, because it would have been a disaster. People didn't want to buy technology. I don't know, probably it'll change. It's all cycles, it all kind of comes in and comes out, and you just can't get too freaked out by any one ebb and flow. So I suspect that the IPO market for technology companies will start to unfreeze next few years, maybe. But either way, I'm not worried about it. Like if it does, and that's something we can do, great. If it doesn't, we're still there, man. We have a very rock solid foundation to keep growing and building stuff.
Very good. All right, Jeevan, thank you so much.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, note that we're recording this prior to one of our customer events, which is called Waypoint on the 7th. I think it'll come out after that. I'm very much looking forward to that. Even though listeners, you'll be hearing this after that, because there's pretty exciting stuff I think we're working on, especially on the spatial AI front. It'll be fun to talk about with everyone.
Cool. So maybe say when people can find more about you and OpenSpace. Yeah,
OpenSpace.ai. That's the website. And you can also just, my LinkedIn profile is there. You can check me out there. That's interesting. Yeah.